When the property listing appeared online, I was shocked. I hadn't even noticed a for sale sign on my neighbor's property. Neighbor was a generous term because our houses were separated by more than 2 miles of dense woods and open fields. But there it was. Rob Daniels' farm, up for grabs, and at a price I couldn't resist. I made some inquiries around town, and people were hesitant to talk. Rob had died suddenly a few weeks prior, they said, though no one seemed to know, or wanted to know, much about the details. His land had sat untouched ever since. When I reached out to the attorney handling the sale, he seemed equally guarded. He mentioned a heart attack, muttering something about estranged family, but beyond that, his answers were short, clipped. None of it bothered me. I saw opportunity, not mystery. The land was rich, and that's all that mattered. The deal went through quickly. A few weeks later, I found myself standing in the middle of Rob's old field. The first breaths of real cold autumn wind stirring the leaves between my feet. I didn't know much about the man, but like most farmers around here, he'd kept to himself. I didn't blame him. Farmers are working before the sun is up, and exhausted by the time it goes down. I didn't expect to be friends. The only real interaction I could remember was a strange one. A few years back, I'd called him one early morning because I heard what sounded like screaming. Maybe on his land, maybe on mine. It was hard to tell. I'd asked if he needed help, but he just mumbled, "There's nobody out there," and hung up. The incident had evaporated from memory until now. I spent the first few days surveying my new property, making plans for the upcoming spring. When the morning came to spread lime to manage the pH in the soil for the year, I hitched the spreader to my tractor and made my first pass across the field. It was exciting to think about expanding my little operation with this new patch of land. As I basked in the glow of this point of pride, the tractor ran over something odd. There was an audible crunch, like the breaking of lumber. I looked back to see the spreader dip noticeably as it followed behind. I climbed down, annoyed. It was possible I'd overlooked something just beneath the soil. Mostly, I worried I'd find that an old fence post had damaged my machinery. But what I uncovered was something far stranger. It was a hatch. Framed in metal, rusted around the edges, with thick iron bolts securing it to the ground. The body of the door was wood, now badly cracked. The thing was massive, at least 5 feet wide, and it looked like it hadn't been disturbed in a long time. I kicked dry, caked dirt away from its surface, revealing more of the thick, rusted frame. There was a handle, worn and pitted, but intact. Why would Rob have a hatch in the middle of his field? And what the hell was underneath it? Just the notion of a door leading someplace out here was absurd. Its presence was jarring and unnatural. Standing in front of it, I felt like I was dreaming. I could just leave it, cover it up again, forget it was there. But I knew myself too well. If I didn't look inside now, I'd be back out there with a flashlight at 2 a.m. when I'd finally given in to curiosity. Furthermore, this was my land now. I'd made sure the sale included the mineral rights to the property, so whatever was down there belonged to me. I reached down and grabbed the handle. It was icy to the touch, unnaturally cold for a sunny day. With a deep breath, I gave it a sharp tug. The door twitched in its frame, but didn't pull towards me. I realized that a door this size that opened upward was going to require some serious oomph to bring up and flop over. I decided I could stave off this mystery long enough to finish my chores. When I'd finished spreading lime on the remainder of the field, I took the tractor back to the barn and detached the spreader. I was excited to have a reason to use one of my favorite tools, a hydraulic tractor crane. I'd bought it for pulling trees and stumps, but this was a far more exciting reason to dust it off and attach it to the tractor. I'd had this wild thought that when I got back to the place in the field, it would be gone. Nothing about this made sense or felt real. I had the sensation that I was living out the events of a movie or something. Nothing this interesting ever happened on a farm. The light was fading by the time I rolled to a stop in my new field. The hatch was there. The broken beams, set in the iron frame, looked somehow different. My tractor had broken a few and pushed them inward. Now they were bent upward, like they'd popped up while I was away. That feeling of unreality washed over me again. As I backed the crane into position, it struck me that I didn't have a plan for once the door was open. That didn't matter. If there was something noteworthy, I could make up my mind once I'd seen it. The practical part of me knew that this was going to reveal something mundane, like a well, or a little cache of equipment Rob had placed there. But the romantic in me saw a stone staircase with blazing torches lighting the way downward. I attached a chain to the hatch's metal handle, hoping it wouldn't give out when the crane applied leverage. Firing up the mechanism, I applied torque gingerly. The handle lifted from its inset space in the wood, an iron eye rising up to look at me as I feathered the crane's controls. I held my breath and gave the crane more juice. The door lifted, more smoothly than I'd expected. This crane was worth every penny. With dirt sifting between the broken boards and spilling around the edges of the frame, the earth yawned open, and I was looking into a dark void in my empty cornfield. I thought the wisest thing to do was leave the door attached to the crane to hold it open until I could decide what to do next. I turned on my mag light and stepped cautiously to the opening in the ground. At first I could see nothing. A square of impossible blackness against the ambient light of the evening. The beam from my mag light barely cut through the inky darkness below, swallowed almost immediately as it descended. I leaned closer, feeling the chill emanating from the open hatch, and swept the light from side to side. There, just below the surface, I saw a metal ladder bolted to the side of a stone shaft, disappearing into the darkness. The rungs were worn and smooth. A cold draft seeped from below, carrying with it the smell of damp earth and something else I couldn't quite place. I hesitated, my hand gripping the edge of the hatch. I should walk away. Close the door. Forget I ever found this thing. But I couldn't. The pull of curiosity was stronger than the instinct to flee. This was my land now, and whatever Rob Daniels had been hiding here, I had to know. I grabbed a nearby rock and dropped it down the pit, listening as it clanked against the ladder's rungs on its way down. The sound echoed for a few moments before I heard a faint thunk as it hit bottom, a long way down. I flinched at the sound. Whatever this was, I was beginning to suspect it wasn't anything good. But in spite of my instincts, I wasn't going to walk away. With a deep breath, I swung my legs over the edge and began to climb down. The metal rungs were ice cold under my hands, slick with moisture. My boots clanged against the ladder, and the hollow echoes bounced off the concrete walls, making it feel like the pit was closing in around me. As I descended, the air grew colder, denser, and that strange smell, sickly sweet and sour, intensified, settling deep in my throat. About 20 feet down, my light caught something. An iron door embedded in the wall just off to the side of the ladder. It was smaller than the hatch above, but built from the same thick, rusted metal. There was a handle, similar to the kind you'd find on a vault or a submarine hatch. I paused on the ladder, my breath coming faster now. None of this made a lot of sense. What kind of property had I bought? I reached out and gave the handle a tug. At first, it resisted, but with a grinding squeal, it started to turn. The door creaked open slowly, releasing a rush of stale, putrid air that made me gag. I pulled my shirt up over my nose and shone the flashlight inside. Glancing up and beyond the threshold, I struggled to understand what I was seeing. I flashed my light left and right, up and down. I surmised that this was a large room, mostly bare, with a few tables lining the walls. What I saw in the middle of the room made me wish I'd never come down here. Positioned in the center of the floor was a large cage. It must have been 8 feet tall. I knew right away that this was designed to hold a human. I crawled in through the door. I'd seen enough of the room to safely assume it was empty. My hand brushed a switch on the wall as I stood. Flipping it on, I was astonished to see the room fill with light. I noticed several large batteries under the table to my left. Thoughts of what purposes they might serve beyond lights crept into my head. The room was crude. Cinder block walls, a cement floor with some dark stains here and there. It looked like a DIY bomb shelter. Looking again at the cage in front of me, there was no mistaking this for a fallout space. I didn't want to get near the cage, empty though it was. There were several thick binders on the table nearest to me. I opened one and saw that it was a ledger of some kind. I didn't see titles for any of the columns, but the contents below seemed to be documenting food and water portions, measured in ounces. My former neighbor, the farmer, had a darkness in him. Had Rob Daniels fancied himself some kind of scientist? Whatever he'd been, it was barbaric. This was a sick place, and he had been a sick man. The next binder contained page after page of narrative-style logs. September 2nd. Subject 8, again, displayed low moral character and is adverse to re-education. September 6th. Subject 8 continued to demonstrate stubborn tendencies despite 6 hours of correction last night. September 9th. Subject 8 refused food for the 4th consecutive day. September 16th. Subject 8 expired due to general weakness of body. I dropped the binder to the table, and it hit the metal with a sharp slap. I began to back away with my maglite held against my chest. Not realizing how far I'd gone, I bumped into the cage door and fell backward. I threw my arms out to arrest my fall, but only managed to send the door swinging out. Suddenly I was on my back, inside. I looked up. The door was still in motion. It bounced off the open position of its hinges and swung back, slamming shut with a clang. I was stunned by the impossibility of my foolishness. Had I just locked myself in a cage, in a lunatic's underground bunker? In a panic, I kicked wildly at the door. It felt like an absolution as the door easily swung back open. I took a breath and examined the hardwood floor of the cage. I remember being unsurprised, but nonetheless horrified to see claw marks. I'd watched enough horror films to know, more or less, what the last desperate days of life must have looked like down here. I scrambled out and stood, taking one last look around this nightmare of a room. A dull noise, like something soft striking metal, broke the silence. It had come from the door. I turned to look, but only saw the blackness of the shaft beyond. Snatching my flashlight from the floor, I pointed it into the darkness of the doorway. I will go to my grave, certain that I saw the last scrap of a human foot floating out of view toward the hatch door above. Had there still been someone down here? They must have been someplace farther down the shaft. The ladder did continue on past this room. Oh my God, I gasped in a single rushed breath. If there was someone climbing up that ladder, they could shut me down here. In a blind panic, I threw myself into the circular door. I craned my neck and looked wildly upward. I saw only a dim square of light above. Not waiting to see if a face appeared to leer down at me, I began climbing. Soon, I mounted the hatch door frame and gasped with relief. The first clean breath of air I'd known in the last 20 minutes. It was only seconds later I'd powered up the crane and lowered the door back into place. I stood for a long time, staring at the closed hatch before climbing into the tractor and heading home. I looked over my shoulder a few times, seeing nothing. The next day, I brought the police out to the field. They'd asked a lot of questions about what I'd seen down there, but I tried to deflect them. I don't think there's anyone down there now, and you just need to see it for yourself, I'd said more than once. As the police had me move my crane back into place, the wind picked up. The dry earth swirled, and the officers, untrained as field hands, were too slow to cover their eyes. As they coughed and wiped the dirt from their faces, I squinted into the dust. There, beginning just beside the hatch, a set of footprints. Bare feet, heading off across the field.